My name is Nicole Robinson, and I am the managing director here at Fair Fight. And I'd imagine most of y'all are familiar with Fair Fight and our work, but just a quick refresher, Fair Fight is a national voting rights organization rooted in Georgia, which is where I'm joining y'all from. We work across the country, but our main focus is on protecting the voices and votes for people in the South, and especially voters who particularly face barriers to casting a ballot and having it count. And I'm really excited to be moderating this fair fight together, focused on something I know we're all very invested in, and that is how we build pro-democracy political power in the 2026 midterm elections and beyond. And we have two really incredible leaders in the progressive movement joining us this evening. We are joined by Maurice Mitchell, the National Director for the Working Families Party, and Amanda Litman, the co-founder and executive director of Run for Something. And started, just like a little framing. So I think we all know the kind of environment that we're in right now. It's very like smash and grab, destroy model of Republican politics. Their goal of just like isifying America, their flood the zone so we all feel overwhelmed and don't know where to begin, is threatening all of us. And we can take back power in the midterm. It's a really incredible opportunity. And we can put our democracy on a more sure and stable footing by electing and supporting leaders who understand the stakes of this moment and who are willing to do what needs to be done. And so one really big piece of this that really sticks with me is that like we are the ones who will decide our future. We choose our leaders, and we will ensure that the will of the people prevails. And to that end, I'm really thrilled to start this conversation off with Amanda and Maurice. They'll talk about why our democracy depends on us staying engaged with elections at every level, not just the federal, but also state and local. They're leading the fight for accountability and progress for those who seek to represent us. And so let's go ahead and jump right in. And so to start, I'd like to talk about y'all's organizations and how you're adapting and adjusting in this moment to push back against the current regime. So Amanda, I'd like to start with you if that's all right. So how does this moment feel different than other recent midterm cycles in 2024? And how are you and Run for Something adapting?
Nicole, thank you so much for having me tonight. And I'm really excited to be in conversation with Maurice, one of my favorite people in politics and anywhere, really. So for those who are not familiar, Run for Something recruits and supports young, diverse leaders running for local office in all 50 states. We work exclusively with people running for state house, state senate, city council, school board, library board, those kinds of offices. And we work only with folks for whom this is their first time running for office. We're really the entry point for people new to public service. In 2025, we had 80,000 people raise their hands to say they wanted to run. That is more people than we had in the entirety of Trump's first term. I would not have predicted that if you had asked me right after the election in 2024. It is an unprecedented number of folks who are looking around and saying, if these leaders aren't going to fight for me, I'm going to fight for me. They're looking around and saying, the only place we are going to get meaningful progress on the issues we care about in the first line of defense against Trump and against what this administration is doing is at the state and local level. Congress is not doing shit. And even if we flip Congress, they're not going to be able to govern in any big, meaningful way that people can feel over the next 2 years, 3 years. Accountability and oversight, yes, incredibly important. Don't get me wrong. And we need to flip the House and flip the Senate. And we are already seeing how mayors, city councils, state legislatures are passing meaningful legislation, both to fight back against Trump, but also to actually govern, to make housing more affordable, to get schools free lunches, to lower the cost of insulin, to get books back in schools and pay teachers more. Like they're governing and doing things that people can feel, that can restore your faith in leadership and in democracy. So as we look to this year, one of the things I love is that we're seeing record numbers of people who want to run. And they want to run, yes, in the blue places and competitive primaries. They're challenging incumbent leaders, but they also want to run in deep, deep red areas and purple areas where Democrats have not contested or competed for decades. Just in 2025, we helped a guy in Clarion County, Pennsylvania, who is a former Republican who left the party after January 6th. He was a parent of two kids, one of whom has special needs, and the school system was failing his kids. And he realized that the only way that he could get through was to run for office and make the school system better. And he flipped a seat on the Common Council in his town in a county that Trump won 70-30. That's our opportunity this year. So we're excited. We're going to be working with more than 300 candidates across the country, but already endorsed more than 150. And I think it's going to be an amazing year where we're going to win a lot. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate your passion for workforce because I feel the same, and Maurice, I know you do too, and a lot of folks here do. Because like I don't know about y'all, but a lot of times the local candidates who are running in small races are really the ones who have like this level of like passion and dedication that is so incredible. And that really makes me think a lot about the New York mayoral election. And I know that was a really big win for the Working Families Party, and that win and the work y'all did, like we introduced a lot of people to the party, but also gave a lot of people a lot of hope, right? Like I remember when that happened, people were just like blown away and so excited. I think it's still like a bright spot for people as we're thinking about what's possible. So, Maurice, how has the success in increasing awareness impacted your strategies for 2026 and beyond?
Well, first of all, Nicole, thank you so much for having me. And Amanda, it's always such a joy to be with you, to be in conversation with you. I'm such a booster of all the work that you do, and all the incredible candidates that are able to find an opportunity to run on the local level because of the infrastructure that you're building. So yeah, New York, the Zoran effect. You know, it's interesting because oftentimes politics feels like this thing that we have to do, like you have to eat your Wheaties, but every now and then politics rises to the level of like almost like the spiritual, right? And I feel like many of us had that moment watching the rise of Zohran Mamdani and the New York City election. And the thing that I want to unpack, because people often talk about how exceptional Zoran is, and he's a very, very talented person. But I want to be able to acknowledge how exceptional he is with what I think is happening all around the country. Because on the same election day that Zoran won in New York City, we had victories in Dayton, Ohio, in Seattle, Washington, in Albany, in Syracuse, in Buffalo, in New York. And I think all those victories represent a changing tide with working class people all across the country, not just in big cities like New York. Because people are like, well, it's New York, it could maybe only happen in New York. And I'm like, how do you explain Shanice Turner Sloss in Dayton, Ohio? You know, um, how do you explain, Buffalo's a Rust Belt town. How do you explain that? It's not really like an East Coast town. And I do think that there is a fundamental shift in the cultural fabric where people are resisting status quo politics, especially in the face of the horror of Trump, of the ICE raids, of the cruelty of MAGA. People, I think, desperately want leaders that are bold, that are courageous, that are willing to fight. And they come in different packages. I think, actually exist on a spectrum ideologically. But I think Zoran represents, I think, that class of leadership that so many people are asking for. People do want to believe again, even though again after again after again, people have been hurt or traumatized by politics. People really do want leadership. And when we see it, we know what it feels like and looks like, and we grab it. And the thing about campaigns is that they can build a bigger we. They could be a cause for solidarity. They could be an opportunity for people of all different walks of life, of all different backgrounds, to find a bigger identity in choosing this fight together. And I think that's one of the beautiful sort of like romantic lyrical things about democracy and about politics. It can be poetry. It isn't just this procedure or mechanism. It isn't simply putting out the garbage, something that you have to do, and if you don't do, things are going to stink. Sometimes politics is putting out the garbage, and sometimes it's poetry. And I think we got a little bit of poetry with Zoran. And yes, this gave us an opportunity for a lot of people to take a first look or a second look at the Working Families Party. And so that has meant that we have been growing in new and exciting ways over the past year. I think it's a combination of the talented candidates like Zoran and Katie Wilson in Seattle and some other folks, but also just where people are at. People are finding their footing. They're not waiting for some like leaders somewhere to take them to the freedom side. People are stepping up and they are choosing in small and big ways to lead. Public courage is contagious, and putting your hand up and saying I'm going to run is a during a moment like this is a form of public courage. And I think it's more important than ever that we build long-term vehicles to be able to hold people's political aspirations. And that's what a political party is. And that's why I build the Working Families Party. Because there's a set of people who, for a lot of reasons, have either been rejected by politics or have rejected politics, but who desperately need to be involved in politics. And we need to create those venues for them. And the Working Families Party is designed for working people across race and working people, including cross-pressured people who don't necessarily fit in the progressive to conservative sort of axes that are just like, I want things to be better. And, we know that the Republican and Democratic Party brand are in the pits with everyday people. And the Working Families Party brand is a brand that could be deployed in order to meet those folks where they're at.
And I will just add one thing, which is after Zoran run for something, saw 10,000 people raise their hands to run for office in those 2 weeks.
That's
It
a lot.
was our biggest organic candidate recruitment surge ever. So there is so much power that comes from joy.
That's incredible. That's really cool to think about. And like the point of what y'all are saying is that it's not just about the person running and winning, it's what they inspire in others. And that's so important, right? For the moment that we're in and that we're going to be faced with continuing. And I think about too on the point of like somebody being a really great candidate who just inspires people and wins races on a platform that people wouldn't expect them to win on, right? And they inspire and encourage people. And again, like candidates who run for U.S. Senate and Congress can be so incredible and so inspiring. But I know in my experience, and I know y'all, I think y'all would agree, sometimes really the best candidates that you ever meet are just like the everyday people that you wouldn't necessarily think would be a senator or a congressperson. But it's a public school teacher or someone who's retired and they just decide that I'm going to run for my state house seat or my county commission seat. And so like to that point, right? Like so much of the change that we want and we need relies on winning these down ballot races. But traditionally, like as was said in the beginning, the engagement and focus is at the top of the ticket, even though we've seen very, very powerful examples of how inspiring candidates running in smaller races can be. And so, kind of like to that point, like for y'all, and whoever wants to go first on this one, how can we get more people focused and interested in these incredibly important races? Like, I'm so passionate about them. I know y'all are, and so many people here are, but there are a lot of people who aren't. But I feel like if they heard, there's got to be something there to like really get them to see and understand. So just curious what y'all think.
Okay. Okay. So just yesterday, we've held it's been a tradition at the Working Families Party to hold our very own response to the President's State of the Union address. And we held an address yesterday, and Congresswoman Summer Lee was the Working Families Party respondent. And why I bring her up to respond to your question is that Representative Lee, she started off on the local level, right? She started off in the state house in Pennsylvania. And she learned how to govern. She learned how to build coalitions. She learned how to engage in legislative fights. She learned how to win hard primaries, all on the local level. And then she took that experience and that coalition, the Labor and Community Coalition that she established by winning those state house fights, and then she brought it to a congressional primary and she won. And right now in California, there's a candidate, an amazing candidate called Randy Villegas, and he's running in a purple seat. He's a Working Families Party candidate. He started on the local level as in school board. And Mai Vang is in Sacramento City Council. Mai Vang is an amazing candidate, just a
Mhm.
brilliant candidate who's running, challenging a political dynasty in Sacramento. Why they're all important is that they started and they cut their teeth on the local level. And it's almost cliche, but a lot of the conversations we have about how we got here, sometimes people talk about how in the 70s and early 80s, how the conservative movement invested on the local level, invested in running people in all types of seats. And eventually those people were able to take on bigger roles. And, like over decades, that movement was able to take over the country. And
Mm.
so if we're serious about change, and if we're not simply interested in just getting people elected, then we need to build a movement that starts on the hyper local level. And we need people to actually learn how to govern. If we actually care about governing, Amanda,
Mhm.
right? You talked about this. Like, we're not just getting people elected, we actually want to impact people's lives. And so if
Yeah.
we actually care about governing, people need to learn how to govern. I want people to learn how to govern on the local level
Yep.
before they go to Congress, right? And we need to give them those experiences, and that's why I think local politics is so important. And then the final thing is that those decisions actually matter. Most of
Yep.
the things I get frustrated about are issues pertaining to local politics. Like when we talk about policing, well, that happens on the city level. That's a municipal issue. I'm in New York, and my neighbors are complaining about snow removal. That is, you gotta take that up with Zoran, right?
Yeah.
By the way, he did an excellent job
You did
this
a great job.
yeah, yeah. But on and on and on again, many of the issues that people care most about are the closest to them tend to be local. And thank God that we live in a country where power is diffuse and where presidents aren't kings. And so where we have opportunities to govern, when we talk about how we push back against Trump and Trumpism, it's like, well, we take those governing opportunities and we push
Yep.
back. We push back against them, but we also use governing as a tool to demonstrate our vision of the world we actually believe in. And we don't have to imagine that Trump and Trumpism needs to end for Democrats where they have majorities to demonstrate what they actually want.
All of the things Maurice said. Mai is a Run for Something alum. Summer is a Run for Something alum. There are so many incredible. I think we have a couple dozen of our alum who started in the local level who are now running for Congress, for Senate, for governor. Francesca Hong in Wisconsin, Rua Roman in Georgia, um, uh, Brianna Titone, who's running for state treasurer in Colorado. They're just incredible leaders across the country who are inspiring and authentic and values driven, community rooted, ideologically a little bit like not all aligned, but rowing in the same direction. And I think that is really where we want to be as a party in order to be able to win in lots of places. The only thing I'd add to what Marie said is that on a very tactical level, the way to win the big elections is to win the small elections. Elections in this country are not administered by Congress or by the president. They are administered on the state and local level. Counties, cities, townships, city clerks, county clerks, and state legislatures play a role as well, setting laws around voting, voter suppression, or alternatively, expanding access to the polls. State legislatures also draw the maps, as we have seen over the last year, as they're doing redistricting in about two-thirds of the country, those maps are being shaped at the state legislative level. If we want to make it possible to win the big elections, we need to win the small ones. We also need to start thinking about what the Electoral College could look like in 2032. Places like New York, Illinois, California are going to lose electoral college votes, and places like Texas, Florida, Idaho are going to gain them. These are places that are going to be really hard for Democrats to win if we start from the top down. We are not going to flip a state by just, whoops, we got a great presidential candidate. We're going to do it by winning cities, counties, school boards, building a bench, proving that it is possible. Idaho, as an example here, is on Run for Something's long-term battle up plan. Not because I think Idaho is going to be a presidential battleground in 2032, but because in 2032, they're going to get another congressional seat around Boise. And if we are not going to have, if we want to have a chance at winning that, over the next 6 years, we need to elect some people to the Boise City Council or the school board or the broader community in that area. It is a tactical decision as much as it is meaningful for people's lives. The final piece I will say here about why local matters is you can feel the wins. One of the ways that I know I have personally stayed in this work over the last 9 years, because remember, something is 9 years old, no breaks, straight from the 2016 campaign through to this, is because most of my life and most of my professional job, I don't have to think about Trump. During the Biden years, I didn't have to think about Joe Manchin. I got to think about the things and the people who were doing the stuff I could feel. I could see it. And when you are working in that way, and especially on the local level, when you, wherever you are volunteering on a local campaign, or you're knocking doors, or you're supporting a local candidate, you get to know your neighbors, you get to know your community. And then when you win, because you do often win, especially in long shot races, local politics, very weird coalitions in local races, you can win. And then you get to ride your bike down the bike lane that you helped make possible, or go to the restaurant that you helped open, or go to send your kid to the school that you helped fund. It like is a complete circle kind of activity that restores your faith that the process actually can work if you participate in it in the right way. So it's it is to me the best bang for your buck. It is your dollar goes so far locally for every possible reason.
Yeah, that's all like both of you very very a great way to capture the importance of it, and I think in a way that hopefully like really does resonate with people. And kind of like Amanda, on your point about building a bench, right? So I really appreciate you saying that, because one of the things I think people don't realize, right, is that Georgia turning blue in 2020, it wasn't like it didn't just happen, right? Like it was a lot of work for a very long time. And one piece of it is Democrats were winning in the state house and were gaining seats every cycle since I think like 2012.
Yeah.
And like that was a really big piece of what we saw. And we had a huge wave of Democrats coming in 2018 and flipping seats. And like all of those things kind of like help get to electing Joe Biden, electing Senators Ossoff and Warnock, but then also having incredible leaders in the legislature. And within that, too, we even elected some really stellar people to county commission seats and city council seats. And like I can think of some of them, and I'm like, oh man, I just know this person is going to run for state house one day, or I'm going to make the ask, or somebody's going to, and hopefully they will. And they've already kind of built the community. They know their voters so well. So like that's a really, really key piece of this, I think. And I appreciate you both kind of like uplifting the importance of local races. And so to that point, right, and I know you've talked about candidates being more inspired now and running for office being almost like an act of resistance and courage. So for these emerging candidates, right, like what are the main issues that are motivating them to run? I know, of course, there's people running because of the Trump regime and what that means, but like kind of for y'all working with these candidates directly, what are you guys hearing from them? Yeah, and whoever wants to start.
Number one issue we're hearing folks say is housing. And the flavor is a little bit different depending on where you are, whether it's talking about tenants or, mobile homes being bought up by private equity. Like the flavor is a little different, but it's housing. Because at the end of the day, if you can't afford to live where you want to live, you can't afford to have the life you want. It is about the agency that people are feeling that they do not have in the way that they want their life to go. Number one issue is housing. Number two is childcare. Now, part of that's because we work with a lot of folks primarily in their 20s and 30s who have young kids or are thinking about starting families and looking at the $22,000 a year that if you're lucky, you're only paying for daycare or early childhood care and wondering how they can never have the family they want. Number three is transportation. We're hearing a lot of people talk about whether it's commutes or public transit or bikes or green space, thinking about how do you get around where you are on the local level. It's a big issue that's coming up. I'll say number four, and this has really been in the last 6 months, is immigration. People are looking at what can I do to help fight back against what ICE is doing. You want to keep them from opening a detention center? Zoning. Zoning laws can fuck up a detention center. You want to make it so that ICE cannot be masked in your community? You can do that on the city council or in the state capitol. So we're hearing people talk about this as as a vehicle for fighting back. So the final thing, and this is actually different in 2025 and 2026 than in 2017, is we're very explicitly hearing people say, I'm not waiting my turn. Like, I am done with this get to the back of the line. I am done with this, like, oh, there's a machine. You can't really engage. No, they're like, screw it. I'm doing it. It's my time. If they're not going to fight for me, I'm going to fight for me. I think that to me is indicative that we are on the tipping point of a change in who makes up the Democratic Party because we are done with the idea that there is a kingmaker. You cannot manufacture a good candidate anymore. You can only empower one. I think that is really one of the distinctions we're at in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, plus to all that, and I would say, yeah, there is a palpable populist energy. And so what I mean by that is that people are running against the establishment.
Yep.
I mean, and this is in all regions of the country, in rural, suburban, and urban places, people are running against the establishment. And a candidate's ability to differentiate themselves and contrast themselves from the establishment is earning them a lot of support. Because one of the things that definitely primary voters, but even in these general elections, some of the special elections, one of the things that it's clear to me that they're saying is that we have come to the consensus that the establishment is the reason why we're in this mess. And
Hmm.
and we need to desperately get from under this mess. Um, so that's kind of one meta issue. Then I would just say yes, all the issues around affordability, like Zoran pretty famously ran very consistently on a suite of issues that just spoke to the affordability of the city that he loves, right? Um, Basically, it was about free and fast buses, a rent freeze, and childcare, right? Those are the three tip of the spear issues. And the reason why they penetrate is that we have a real and urgent economic crisis in this country. And we believe that economic populism is one of the tools that we could use to build a bigger we, because so many people are facing it, including people who may have dropped out of politics or may not see themselves as being progressive or whatever. Another thing that we've been talking to a lot of people about are data centers.
I
And
was going to say it's
yeah,
new.
and what's fascinating about data centers is that nobody likes them. Nobody is a fan of these AI corporations, like across ideology, of course, across party identity. So it's another issue that you could really build a big, broad, diverse movement around and get a lot of energy. And people are looking at whether or not a candidate is getting supported by these corporate lobbies or not. It actually is mattering more than ever if a candidate is running a clean campaign with grassroots donations, or if they're getting money from the AI or crypto lobby or APAC or the real estate lobby, or those types of things really are beginning to matter to more and more voters, especially inside of the Democratic primary. And then the last thing I'll say, this question of how a candidate is fighting back against fascism, right? How they're doing it, their willingness to bring the fight to those policies. And yeah, there's Trump, but there's the little Trumps that exist up and down the ballot and in all different positions, from the state and county level all the way down to school boards. And so that also is something that is exciting a lot of people. And, what feels different to me, because there was like this big wave from 2017 into 2018, and it definitely felt like a resistance moment, right?
Hmm.
This feels like definitely there's a resistance, but the quality of the resistance feels populist. It feels even bigger.
Hmm.
which gets me really excited because it it means that our candidates could build different coalitions and we could bring in more people. And there's more people, including cross-pressured people that maybe before might not have seen themselves as part of what they would have thought as like a progressive resistance movement. I think this time around, they're organizable and getting in the fight, which is very exciting.
Hmm.
Yeah, thank you guys both for that. And kind of like it makes me think of the inverse of kind of like what's motivating candidates to run for office. But then too, and Maurice, I'd like to start with you on this one. Kind of like what are you seeing as the like the importance of, you know, voters having candidates who they actually feel like they can resonate with, right? And that like inspire them and encourage them, to y'all's points about instead of having like the establishment candidate being the person that gets all of the backing and people kind of rejecting that. So kind of what are you hearing from voters in relation to what they want from candidates? And we've talked about this a little bit kind of like throughout. And I think that's a really big piece of the changes that we're seeing in candidates who are winning and how they're running. But just curious your kind of additional thoughts on that and kind
Sure.
of a little more on like what voters are expecting from candidates now.
Voters want fighters. Voters want
Hmm.
fighters. And to be a little bit more specific, um, part of part of being a credible fighter is that folks need to know who you're fighting for and therefore which forces you're willing to fight against, right? I think that that actually is really important because I see people kind of being fighty without necessarily filling in the dots. Like, okay, great. So who exactly are you fighting for? What issues might you be actually fighting to deliver to them? And therefore, um, which opponents are you going to challenge to make that happen? And sometimes people are kind of vague. I think those details actually really matter. Um, the other thing is, and this is something when people, when they ask my advice, I, and it's interesting because like we talked about Zoran before. I think the Zoran effect is great. So many people want to get into the fight and they want to throw their hat into the ring. But I try to be very clear. Zoran ran his race.
Hmm.
I've already heard people be like, I'm the Zoran of Bergen County. I'm like, no, 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 no. Zoran was the Zoran of New York City. Be the you of the place that you're at, right? And so, you know, people don't need to necessarily agree with everything, but they do need to believe in you,
Yeah.
right? And I do think that people are gravitating towards just like authentic people who, I remember growing up and politicians always seemed kind of like, I don't know, like, like newscasters,
Yeah.
like not exactly a real person. I think the era of that type of politician is done. People just want real people. And I do think it matters that people have a track record of being in fights in the community that they're running in, right?
Mm.
Yeah, maybe you're a teacher or you're a homemaker or you're a union organizer or you are, on the front lines of an issue fight that you really cared about. But like it's coming from an authentic place, right? There's like a real story or a real person. And you're articulating the things that you actually believe, not the poll tested thing. I really, really, really think that that matters, and that's a great differentiator, for grassroots candidates.
I want to like, I hate to use a expression, but like double click on that a little bit because I think it is so important. Um, there is I think a couple axes that like candidates can currently exist on. There's like, yeah, left, center, especially within the broader like democratic ideological space, left or moderate, okay. Fight or fold, yes. Artificial versus authentic is where I think the biggest differentiator is. And I think, in particular, the way that people consume political information now demands that candidates can be themselves all the time. You can no longer get away with just being an incredible orator who can give a really good speech and then like can go back into the green room and not talk to anyone. You cannot get away with being able to do like a really good Sunday morning panel show and then screw off into the weekend if you ever really could. You need to be able to hold your shape as a person with a set of core values in the 30-second video and the 3-minute cable hit and the 3-hour podcast. And you need to do it when cameras could be on you constantly because you, as a local candidate or even a congressional one, you are always around your voters and they all have cell phones and you are always on. So if you do not have a strong sense of self and of what you believe and what you are fighting for, you will crumble. I think that this is happening at the same moment that people are already feeling the weight of the AI slop online, of like the artificial crap that is being generated by the various chatbots and, generators that like you can't scroll YouTube without seeing. And it feels like you're making your brain rot. And you can see when there's a person behind it. I don't know if any of you guys are on, bear with me with this tangent. I don't know if any of you guys are on TikTok, but there is a woman online. Her name is Kaden. She goes by the Staples Baddie. She is an employee at a Staples, just like an associate. And over the last like 6 or 8 weeks, she's been making videos just while she's on her shift at Staples of like showing off the really cool things you can get done at the Staples store. You can get a custom mug. You can get like a poster. You can get a sticker. Like, check it out. Look at this cool cat that I put on a mug. Her videos, 5 million views, 7 million views. She's got like interesting makeup, piercings, really long nails, like a very interesting way of speaking. She is so clearly her. Like you could not manufacture her in a marketing agency if you paid them $1 million a month. It is blowing Staples sentiment through the roof. Young people are commenting on this and being like, I didn't even know Staples still existed. I'm going to the one in my neighborhood this week. It is the kind of like authentic human first marketing, which is what many campaigns are. They, as I said earlier, you cannot manufacture it. You can only enable it and empower it. Candidates who know themselves and know what they believe can communicate it in a way that breaks through in this moment and can do so even if their voters don't agree with them on every issue. And I think Maurice said that quite well. We're not expecting, and we can't expect voters to agree with us on every issue. What we can is ask them to trust us, and authenticity is what enables trust. So I think that the candidates we are going to see succeed over the next 6 months are going to be the ones who you can tell are real people. If you feel like an AI generated version of a candidate, you are not going to succeed. Because we don't want the slop. We don't want it in Congress. We don't want it on our TikTok feeds.
Honestly, I'm gonna say I didn't know Staples were still around. I thought they were all closing down, so I'm gonna check it
They
out.
were, but then
I just follow Staples Baddie, by the way.
she's so fun. I don't, there is a Staples in in Brooklyn that I need to go to because I really want to get a mug made for my husband. It seems really cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out, encourage other people to do so too. But like I think one of the big things that I is kind of like ringing for me with everything y'all are saying, and it's something I don't remember who told me this, but it was a long time ago. It might have been like an old boss I had who was like, the way people think about who they want to vote for, and they don't think about it consciously, but it's almost like a who would I want to have a beer with? Who would I want to sit down, have a glass of wine with? Like who do I feel like I could hang out with? Um, and I think that's like an important piece to what y'all are saying is that people want candidates who are real and feel real. Like you don't want to hang out with like a stuffy senator who you don't know if you could talk to them, but like a really cool house rep who you see at the store sometimes, or I see my house rep out like for walks sometimes, you know? So to that, I'm going to kind of like pivot a little bit, but this kind of goes back to the points before about people kind of like rejecting the establishment. And this is something that I think the establishment has pushed a lot. And I say they still do, and I know they still do here in Georgia. And that's like focusing on moderate voters and really needing to like go after this like elusive moderate like swing voter and needing to move to the middle to win those votes. And I think this is kind of to the point of what y'all are saying is it's not thinking about what voters really want. It's kind of like some sort of manufactured idea of what voters want. And like in Georgia specifically, it makes me think a lot about like this focus that people still have on like the Kemp Warnock voter, which I'm going to tell folks that those voters are unicorns. Like the circumstances of that race and running against Herschel Walker are incredibly unique, but like that's who a lot of people in the establishment want to focus on, want to go after, want to put all their money behind candidates they think speak to those voters and targeting those voters. And so I'm kind of just curious for y'all, because I think this is going to be a big issue here in Georgia. I think it already is shaping up to be, and I'm sure it is in other places. Kind of like, what are your thoughts on this topic of like the elusive unicorn, moderate voter, and kind of how can we reconcile the needs of people who are a little bit more moderate with the shift to more progressive politics? Now, whoever
Wow.
wants to start with that
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Sure.
I have a lot to say here, but actually I did want to say one other thing about authenticity, right? If you're trying to be authentic, then you're not being authentic.
Hmm.
Like I noticed that a bunch of like leading Democrats, it seemed like somebody gave them the "you should curse" video, like memo. So they're just like awkwardly like, okay, I'm gonna say the word fuck. Like it's just, authenticity isn't something that you just be yourself. But that actually to me is a good segue to this question. So, um, when we say the moderate voter, I want us to actually consider who or what we're actually talking about, right? Um, so some people think ideologically, some people do, but most people actually don't think ideologically or have an ideological identity, right? In order to be moderate or centrist, you have to you have to understand where you might fit on a left to right sort of spectrum and see yourself in the middle of that. There's some people like that, but that isn't a prevalent identity. And what we find, like when we do our research, we find that there are some people who definitely are coherently progressive. It's about like 13% of the working class. There are some people who are like totally locked in core MAGA. There's like that's like 13 or 14%. There are like, I don't know, traditional liberals, that's another 13, 14%. Then there's everybody else. And everybody else is kind of like mixed up and cross-pressured and might have views that you might consider maybe conservative around gender, but then views that you might consider to be pretty left around corporate consolidation and the economy, right? People are ideologically incoherent. And some of the most militant, outraged people are soccer moms from the suburbs. And those ladies want fighters. They don't want a milk toast, just random, hey, I'm a small business owner and I have a pulse. Like, that's actually not what and I could just give you a concrete example. Ana Lilia Mejia just won in a New Jersey suburb. And she was by far the most like progressive, ideologically progressive candidate in the race. But I don't think that that's why she got so much energy. It's because her campaign was the most exciting and the most energetic and the most grassroots. And she was the most authentic and she was magnetic. And she is a mom like many of the what you would consider like moderate soccer moms, just like all the other moms, but she was clearly occupying a lane that was generating the most energy. And I think it's a fool's errand to think about politics in those terms. And also that like just to be clear, like when we talk about moderates, I hate the term moderate and centrist because it seems like more reasonable, right? But I remember when Joe Biden had a trifecta and he was trying to pass Build Back Better, the people who tanked his agenda were the quote unquote moderates. And I want to remind people on the grounds that they tanked the agenda. They weren't on popular grounds. They were the ones that were trying to water down the pieces of Build Back Better that would have allowed the government to to negotiate drug prices with big pharma. That is a very universally popular issue. There's no constituency that wants that to happen except pharmaceutical corporations. So like in practice, the quote unquote moderate agenda tends to be unpopular and very, very extreme. Like at the things that these quote unquote moderates actually do. I'm more interested in figuring out how we build larger voter coalitions and how we bring in more voters. Because a quote unquote moderate vote, that vote counts just as much as a quote unquote base vote. So why are we so thirsty for this moderate vote when the base vote counts just as much? I think it's a fiction, and if we wanted to like dig into it, I think there's some sort of like trauma inside of the Democratic Party where they're chasing this voter in order to like heal some sort of wound, but it isn't actually grounded in anything. And I think we need to like do our best to get over that because it gets in the way of actually like smart politics.
Everything Maurice said is spot on. Moderate is not an ideology, it's a triangulation. It reeks of political calculation, and it has no clear definition. Eric Adams was a moderate. Jared Golden is a moderate. Kirsten Sinema was a moderate. You think those people agree on basically anything? Very, very, like, it is a term without definition that is being used to basically punch left. I have no patience for that. And I agree with Maurice fully. Voters do not have ideologies. They have problems that they want solved. And they want candidates and electeds who can credibly promise to solve them and then actually do it. It is possible that you could have someone who is more moderate and also is authentic and is, exciting and energetic. Sure, maybe. It's a little harder. Because again, it's not a point of view. It's not a vision for a better country. It's a vision for nibbling around the edges at best.
From y'all's lips to the establishment's ears.
We're out there yelling.
Yeah, like it's
Oh, Maurice, you're
yeah,
muted.
you're muted, Maurice.
I almost feel like being a moderate is about not having a point of view and being
Yes.
proud of it.
It's I go where the polls tell me to go. There are my people. I must lead them.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think we'd all agree, and everyone here would agree that's not a winning strategy. And we need to think bigger, dream bigger. And it's clear for what we're seeing across the country. We've seen it here in Georgia that like that's what people want. They want people to be real, authentic themselves, and it's really motivating and inspiring people. And kind of like to that point, and we're running out of time, so I want to make sure to get to this question and like one or two more. But with people getting more involved and wanting to run for office, there's also a lot of people who maybe don't want to run for office just yet, but they want to get more involved in this moment, and they want to be here fighting. They want to join these elected officials and candidates in the fight and take action. So, what would y'all say are the best ways for like everyday people to invest time and effort this year leading into the midterms, and then even beyond leading into the elections in 2028? Well, not even just 2028, 2027, and 2028.
Find the most local race you can near you and get involved. School board, city council, water board, light and plant municipal utility. It doesn't matter. The most local race you can, knock doors, make calls, clean toilets, whatever it is they need you to do, show up for them and show up again and again and again. The people you meet will become part of your political posse. Political posse. And you will get to live the impact of your work. It is so much more meaningful, and it also helps build for the rest of the victories. That's my answer.
Oh, yeah. Amen to that. Amen to that. Because, yeah, we need people to run, but we need campaign managers and we
Mhm.
need social media managers and we need people making signs. I mean, we need so much volunteer energy. So just
Mhm.
pick a lane. And, before many of the folks that we eventually ran and got into office, before they chose to do that, many of them started off on somebody else's campaign.
Yep.
That's where Zoran started off. He started off
Yep.
working on other people's campaigns, right? So there's so many opportunities to get involved electorally where your name isn't on the t-shirt and it's like really, really important work. And look, a lot of, a lot of local campaigns on the local level, you're not going to have like a professional campaign manager that you could pay like a big salary. That could be like your best friend, or that could be like a super volunteer. That could be a number of folks. And so I definitely want to encourage everybody to find their lane, to figure out what they can do. Of course, I encourage people to protest. I know the next No Kings is March 28th. Definitely get involved in that. And when you're at, like, I always try to get people to lean into being an organizer. When you're at the protest, meet a few people, meet 5 people, get their numbers, right? Promise to connect with them and bring them into something, bring them into an electoral fight or something like that. But yeah, there's an opportunity for, people are talking about this 2026 being a wave election. It needs to be a blowout. And I think the only way that happens is by everybody picking a lane and just jumping in.
Yeah, thank you for that. And kind of like to this point, and like a kind of like a little bit of a follow-up on this and thinking about like the future ahead. I know a lot of people have like kids, nieces, nephews, cousins, maybe younger siblings. Like I know I have nieces and nephews, and I'm always trying to like radicalize them and get them involved. And we got a question in advance from someone who's just like I think she's here listening with her child, and she takes them to protests and local county party meetings. But I was really just curious what y'all think and is the best way to help get kids involved and to support these efforts to take back power and protect our vote. Because of course, like what we're fighting for is the now, but it's also like what we're creating for younger generations.
You go
Well,
first.
yeah, I started off as a youth organizer, right? And there is likely a youth group or some other program that is local to you that you can get involved with. We at the Working Families Party, we started this thing called Wolf Packs, where if you could get like 3 people together in your neighborhood, we will support you and your organizing. And if you're a young person and there's 3 or 5 of your friends and you want to figure out how to get involved, then you should like start a WP Wolfpack, and there's a number of national organizations that allow folks to be able to volunteer virtually. And so there's all types of opportunities. Also, like my first election was when I was in middle school. I worked on a local city council, like an insurgent city council race. And so trust me, if you're a young person, your local insurgent elected official will gladly take your volunteer energy and put it to use.
And I was that as adults who want to do this, and especially if you're on this call, you're the kind of person that's already engaged, host an event for a politician that's kid friendly. It is kind of wild to me how many events I get invited to, whether it's like canvassing or a fundraiser or whatever, but like I can't bring my kids, whether because of the hour or the location. Um, and I want to. I hosted a small event for someone, or not Zoran, but someone was running in New York City in 2024. That was like a brunch at the playground where people came and they brought their kids and we did bubbles and ate bagels and someone spoke about their campaign. In part because I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And if I want to go see a candidate, I need my kids to come with me because it's a lot of effort. I can't pay a babysitter and go to the event. So if you have the ability to create spaces where people can bring their children with them.
Yeah, those are both really, really awesome. And honestly, I think back on it, and I didn't get like super politically involved until maybe like college, but I'm really inspired by like the younger people I see, and like the even like kids who are really wanting to be active and engaged now. And I know it's really inspiring to me and kind of like to that point. And as we close, and on like I feel like this has been like a very positive and like happy conversation. I hope it's been inspiring and encouraging to people like it has been to me. But just to close, like I think people are always eager to find bright spots in this fight against authoritarianism. And I'm sure there are days where y'all both are just like very taxed and overwhelmed with the fight ahead, but you keep on and you keep fighting. So to that point, kind of like what are some areas or actions that inspire y'all to keep going?
What inspires me? Um, I just came from the a few days with the California Working Families Party, and I'm inspired by young candidates that are, I mean, I mean, these are like people are putting their everything on the line in order to challenge big money or challenge these dynasties like Mai Vang. I'm really inspired by Mai. I'm gonna focus on Mai.
He's the best.
Um, yeah, I mean, just the best, just the best. Like, and just to be honest, guys, some of these folks, who run for office, like. I'm happy that they're running, but
Might as
but
well.
but Mai is the absolute best. And the fact that there's this new crop of leadership that is authentic, that is hopeful, that is joyful, that is for whatever reason has not fallen into the cynicism that so many people have fallen into. It gives me a lot of hope for our future that the next crop of leaders, the people who will lead us to freedom, will be the Mai Things of the world.
Um, Same. People like Matt Robinson is a union member running for office in Iowa. Uh, Emma, oh my God, my brain is liquid. Emily Gregory, who's running for state house in Florida in Mar-a-Lago's district, trying to flip a seat there. These amazing young people who have changed their lives to ultimately change the world. Like, no matter what happens this November, the Democratic Party, the opposition party, is going to look, feel, sound, be different. It's it will, because the leaders that are coming up are not the leaders that got us into this mess. And they are so committed to getting us out of it and to trying to do anything and everything different that they can. And just feel very grateful and glad that along with Working Families Party and so many of our other partners across the country, we get to be part of that journey with them and help them however we can. I think I said it now a couple of times. We do not manufacture leaders, we empower them, we enable them, we give them the backbone, but like they're doing the hard thing. And I feel very lucky that we get to be part of it.
Yeah, agreed on everything. And I really appreciate you both for joining us this evening. And just really grateful for both of you and your leadership in this movement. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. I hope
Yeah.
this was inspiring and encouraging for y'all. Please be sure to check out Working Families Party and run for something. You can learn about great candidates who are local to you that you can help and support, ways you can get your kids involved. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Bye, y'all. Thank you.